John Dickerson is in conversation with columnist and author David Brooks, who's wondering what life might be like if we all felt just a little more seen and heard.
David Brooks is on a one-man mission aimed at no less than changing human behavior. So here we are on a street corner being watched. This is a good chance for both of us to be emotionally vulnerable and seen by everyone.
Right.
So what's your hope for this book, David?
Yeah, I'm hoping that people just learn to see each other, that there's one skill at the center of any healthy family, community, organization, or country. It's the ability to see each other and to make each other feel seen, heard, and understood.
For the last several years, Brooks has been on two writing tracks. His New York Times column addresses politics and society. His books have been an examination of character, morality, and personal architecture. His latest book, How to Know a Person, and he's the first to admit it's partly about how to know himself. Would you cop to your book being a self-help book?
I'm not shy about that. I'm trying to help myself, so right. So it's selfish. I'm trying to help myself, but I hope it'll be helpful to others. And in my view, every book should be a self-help book. You should be able to learn something that'll improve who you are.
Brooks is not just concerned with himself, though. He writes, "We're living in the middle of some sort of vast emotional, relational, and spiritual crisis. It is as if people across society have lost the ability to see and understand one another, thus producing a culture that can be brutalizing and isolating." If we don't see others, what are the stakes?
I think there's nothing crueler than to be indifferent to someone, to make someone feel invisible. And that's happening. But the problem, the skill that I'm talking about, we don't teach it in school. And often we don't teach it anywhere.
The book's thesis is that while human relations are hard, the skills can be taught, and if people can improve their one-on-one interactions, in listening, in conversation, and in what Brooks calls the close at hand, it might have a compounding effect on society. You write about diminishers and illuminators. What's the distinction there?
Yeah, so my theory is that in any group of people, there are some people who are diminishers. They make you feel invisible, unseen. They're not curious about you. They stereotype you. They label you. And then there are other people who are illuminators. And they are people who are just curious about you, and they make you feel lit up.
To lift up those illuminators, Brooks started Weave, the social fabric project. For 6 years, the nonprofit has been supporting people who, as he says, are working to weave together the social fabric in their communities.
We intend to restore souls here.
People like Renee Mitchell in Portland, Oregon, who started the Soul Restoration Center.
I'm always, working with youth who don't see themselves reflected, so I have to give them something that says that I see you, I honor you and your experiences.
She basically embodies everything I learned over 4 years of writing this book. She builds strength in people who have been wounded by injustices of society. And she's everything I'm not.
The challenge, as Brooks acknowledges, is that the forces of modern life, social media, partisanship, pull at our attention, rile us up, turn the other into the enemy. Even he was not immune to these forces recently. The now famous $78 tweet, it's been seen some millions of times.
Yeah.
Last month, while eating at Newark Airport, Brooks posted about his $78 lunch of a burger and bourbon. "This is why Americans feel the economy is terrible," he wrote. The response was not favorable. He was accused of being misleading because the booze and not the food was pricey, accused of being out of touch, entitled, and worse. The post has been viewed more than 38 million times. Does that reaction surprise you?
It's like every screw up I've made on social media, not too many, but I thought about that tweet for like 3 seconds. And I sent it out, and it started out as being a joke. It was like a picture of a meal I was eating at an airport with a burger, fries, and bourbon. And it was probably the least healthy meal I hope I ate that week. And so it started out as, look, and it was $78. The joke in my head was, I can't even afford to make poor lifestyle choices. Right. But the way I wrote it was incredibly stupid. And so it seemed like I was oblivious to something that's blindingly obvious, which is that me, as a New York Times columnist and a well-off, lucky, privileged journalist, as if I'm not aware that that's very different than a family living paycheck to paycheck.
Brooks started as a Times columnist 20 years ago as the conservative on the op-ed page. He often infuriated liberals, but recently he says he's become more liberal, out of sync with much of the Trump era.
The Republican Party used to be the party, you weren't thrilled by them, but they were the business party. They knew how to run things. And that seems like eons or light years ago.
You wrote recently after the Republican debate that it demonstrated the disease of narcissistic hucksterism.
Yeah, I think that's what Donald Trump has brought into our life.
What's narcissistic hucksterism?
It's what Vivek Ramaswamy was doing in that debate. Yeah. It's like, you don't have to tell the truth. You just have to tell the entertaining thing that makes you a showman. How many human beings can take a mugshot and turn it into a positive thing for them?
And Brooks thinks there's not a small chance that Donald Trump could end up back in the White House.
And so I think there's a 40% chance that Donald Trump wins re-election. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say the majority, but I take it extremely seriously.
So does David Brooks have the prescription to save us from ourselves, or is he a lonely voice crying in the wilderness? One of the unifying ideas in politics, whether you're on the left or the right, is that these are dire times and the wolf is at the door. Yeah. And so in those times, do you worry that what you're prescribing in this book, which is to see the other, is naive? Because people are saying, well, fine, but the wolf's at the door, and I'm not going to say, boy, isn't that some nice fur you have?
Yeah, well, I don't think the wolf's at the door. I found it's very hard
but
to
everybody does. I mean, left and right. You know,
but not me. Yeah. I found it's very hard to hate people up close. All you have to do is show a little hint of humanity. They say, oh. And then suddenly all the wolf at the door stuff diminishes. It's not naive to lead with trust. It's not naive to lead with respect. It's practical. And so I guess I reject the idea that I'm being like a babe in the woods in a world of wolves. I've got the tools that are the most aggressively effective at countering the wolf.